I recently listened to a podcast. It was actually just this week. And right now, I don't have my notes with the name of the person who is speaking. She is a scientist, a researcher, and was talking about the science of spirituality. Now, I'm not someone who, I'll say it this way, I still feel frustrated when I hear people validating something because they now have a scientific language for it, or because we can now see it through our scientific lens. That still frustrates me because part of the suggestion with that is that the thing wasn't valid, aka wasn't real, aka wasn't something to be trusted before science could speak about it. And science is a language, it's a way of understanding something. It is not the only truth. And I think that we get confused about that with the scientific process and with science languaged outcomes. So I say that because I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation as I talk about spirituality. Now, I am also someone who gets really excited about what science can see. That was my first very clear career path, was going into science when I was in high school. I loved my science classes. I took a lot of science. I that was the one subject I didn't have any issue saying yes to a class in. And I was very fortunate to have classes, or to go to schools that had classes in marine biology and microbiology, as well as the standard physics, chemistry, earth sciences, things like that. So, on the one hand, I feel that science is an incredibly limited way of looking at the world. Because of the way that we have, maybe it's because we've been trained to think that if it can't be explained scientifically, then it's not, that it's woo woo, or it's just something to be made fun of, ridiculed, or dismissed. And that's not actually the truth of the world. And then on the other hand, I get as excited as many other people when we actually have a paper that lays out this is what's happening as far as we can tell, with the information and understanding and technology that we have to this point. So I lay that foundation so that now I can say my experience with spirituality has been experiential. And I know from my experience that I cannot tell you what your spiritual experience is going to be. And you cannot tell someone else what their spiritual experience is going to be. Religion and spirituality are different. So, religion is a set of rules and rituals that we follow in order to practice a belief system. Spirituality is free form, it is the direct call and response with God, with the divine. Those two can go together. We can be spiritual and religious. We can also be spiritual without a religious container. Religion, again, is a set of laws, practices, rituals. So step by step, you do this thing first, you lay this thing here, you say this prayer at this time. Those are all religious practices that hold a container of beliefs together in a system. Whereas spirituality is the thing that we each do individually, either because we are inspired by our religious practices and we want to take them into a one-to-one conversation with God or with the divine, with this experience of life that is unseen around us. I'm trying to demonstrate that there are many, many words that you can use to explain this. Spirituality is going to be that direct conversation, that direct experience, and there isn't a guideline for it. There isn't a set of rules. There isn't a document that we can consult that says, oh, yes, that was the experience that I had, and I can recreate it by doing these steps again. It's a very, the word organic comes to mind, although that may not be right. What I'm wanting you to understand is that when it comes to being in our spirituality, there aren't going to be books that we can read that tell us what our experience is going to be like. There will be teachers and guides that can help us find our way to our spiritual experience. And that is what I'm hoping to do. We just cannot tell you what that experience is going to be, and what has worked for me is not necessarily going to work for you. What has worked for others will not necessarily work for you. When it comes to spirituality, we can all share our insights. We can share the experiences that we took to bring ourselves into an experience, but we can't tell you what your experience is going to be. Okay, so last year I created this beautiful program. It was meant to be a 3-month immersion program into helping people develop spiritual practices so that you can be very in touch with, very aware of your internal counseling system, your internal guidance, your intuition. Again, a variety of words to explain this experience of the inner knowing, the inner spiritual expression. I had an amazing time creating the program, and then my life happened. My spirit needed to go into the underworld for a while. That is what 2021 was for me. It was a complete undoing. And each time I thought I would come out of it, I dropped into deeper levels. So I put that course on the back burner, and over time lost sight of why. So why I feel that's important. Why do I feel it's important for people, for us, for you to have a clear sense of your individual knowing, like your knowing, is because the world has always been changing. It has always been loud. There have always been all of these opinions coming at us. However, we are at a I'm really wanting to be careful with my words, because words are activations. They can pull something out of us. They can trigger adrenaline. They can trigger serotonin. Like they words can. They very much affect us. So I'm wanting to choose my words as carefully as I can without going on tangent. So obviously the world is changing, and it's changing in a way that it hasn't changed before. So I think of what I used to hear when people said there were a group of people born in the 1800s who lived through the crossing of the 1900s, like that century turnover. So these people, they went from no telephone to telephones. They went from no cars, like horse-drawn buggies, to motorized vehicles. The airplane became a thing in that crossover from the 1800s to the 1900s. So these people went from an entirely different way of being to this very technologically forward-moving society in what seems like a sudden, short period of time. We are in that kind of phase again where it feels to a lot of people like literally there's that volume of American history, or not American history, but world history, human history. There's that shelf of the encyclopedia of life on planet Earth, from whatever to 2020. And then we're moving into writing these new volumes over here. Nobody has any idea. Nobody has any idea what we're writing. So I say nobody has any idea. There are ideas, but nothing has been fully formed. We are in the creation, idealization, dreaming, nightmare stage. It is important to know what knowledge and awareness and knowing is coming through you from the inside, because there is going to be so much external noise as we figure out what the new world is going to look like, what our new rules are. We need to be able to hear inwardly in order to be clear when the external information is coming at us at the rate of speed that it has been coming at us and will continue to come at us. You need to be able to hear what's true for you, what's right for you, what's healthy for you, where your genuine contributions lie. You need to be able to hear that information. And one of the ways that the only way that I have learned how to gather that information for myself is to develop a relationship with my spirit. And I don't like to say it that way because I think that sounds like spirit and self are different, separate, and I don't experience it that way. There are a lot of people who would say that they are actually separate, self and spirit, personality and spirit. I don't really want to get into that. I feel like in my development, that's a very personal thing. And if you have a different experience of that, that's fine. But we're still talking about getting very literate, spiritually literate. So this woman who did this research was talking specifically about the Generation Z. And I have not been able to connect with Generation Z in terms of understanding what they're about up to this point. I've heard a lot about like the TikTok generation and what they're into in social media and gaming and all of this. And that's just not a language that I speak. But when she spoke about the rates of depression, now depression all over the age range, it does not matter. We've all, whatever age range, we have dealt with this. But the levels of disconnect, disenchantment, lacking a sense of belonging and purpose, that is language I understand. So our spiritual awareness is vitally important at this time. We have been trained to believe that spiritual talk, spirituality, the spirit, are things to be dismissed. They didn't have scientific, logical backing. They are absolutely not things to dismiss. And there are ways that you can develop a very strong relationship with your spirit that will guide you unerringly when you learn how to listen and obey. And when I use the word obey, I know that can bring up a lot of angst and issue for people, for those of us who don't like that word. I am talking about having a deep reverence and respect for the wisdom that comes from within each of us. That is what I'm talking about when I say obey. So I'm sharing this because I have been re-inspired to come back and share what I know are gifts that I've been developing over the years. And I just want to set the invitation for you to come on this walk with me. That's what I would like to offer. It's an invitation to go on this walk of spiritual literacy and spiritual relationship with me. So thank you for tuning in.